Welcome to Hancock's VMware Consultant.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from the slab began to rise.
And good evening, and I'm back in the lab, suitably trimmed up for Halloween. And this was actually going to be a surprise for Halloween, because I was going to do a Halloween themed evil Hancock's VMware half hour, but you'll have to wait for that. So this evening, just before I was going to clock off, email dropped in my inbox, and I was quite surprised to see that Broadcom/VMware today, October the 21st or 21st of October 2024, have released VMware vCenter Server 8.0 Update 3D and an 8.0 Update 2E, just to make it confusing. And it would appear that I did a video about this before, but I will put in the description. So please thumbs up and subscribe wherever they appear. We, on about 10 days ago, we did a updating VMware vSphere Instance Server 8.03b to 8.03c using the reduced downtime upgrade function. And it would appear that the CVE, the CVE 2024 -38812 is the vCenter server heap overflow vulnerability hasn't been resolved. So this new version released today fixes this, hopefully. And this is quite a critical vulnerability. It has a severity rating of 9.8. So again, it's almost off the Richter scale. This is applicable again to 7.0, which is the fixed version is 7.0 U3T Tango, applicable to 8.0 U2, which is U2E, and the update we're going to do today, which is the 8.0 U3D. This is that fresh off the press that it doesn't even appear yet in the release notes, unless Broadcom is retiring where we find the release notes for VMware vCenter Server, etc., and their products. They have got a link in the description which takes you here. So it does actually say the public website hosting data center servers are undergoing maintenance, hence the release notes is drafted and published in a knowledge base article as a temporary solution. Okay, there we go. That explains why it's not on the release notes. So I will put all these in the description. I'll also basically put a link to where you can actually basically download, if you're entitled, 8.0 UTE or 8.0 U3D. And in tonight's video, we're going to do 8.0 U3D update using RDU, or using the reduced downtime upgrade function. So I'll put these descriptions to the previous videos that I've done. These are really just being done for continuity, because as I've mentioned before, somebody will ask me, have you got a video for upgrading 8.03b or 8.03c to 8.03d? So this is the video. Stay tuned. So if you've watched these videos, or if you've used the RDU function before, you will know by now that we need to download the full ISO from Broadcom using that link here, which I will put in the description. And we then have to download that to our ISO data store. And then we have to actually basically mount the ISO in our VMware vCenter Server 8.03c virtual appliance, virtual machine. As you can see, we've done a number of these over the last couple of months, and we've got a history of them here: 8.03, 3A, 3B, and 3C, our current version. And if we actually basically look in the root hierarchy of vCenter server, you can see here it says updates available. Normally, we have a banner across the top here. Maybe they've just not pushed it out yet because this is so fresh. I don't like normally being a penguin, but VMware are saying that this is actually rather critical. So here in the lab, it doesn't really make a difference really whether or not things go peaked on, because it's a lab, and it actually basically gets me hands-on experience of doing this, so that I can take this to production and see whether or not that we're going to see any similar issues. So I'm going to click updates available, and it's going to check the ISO that's installed, and that basically currently says 8.03.00400, build 243.22831. So I'm going to click next. I haven't actually basically backed up this vCenter server, so I'm going to tick the box there anyway, and I'm just going to click next. If you've watched this video before, you will know that the vCenter Server Lifecycle Manager plugin needs to be upgraded to the latest version in order for it to properly orchestrate the upgrade process. After the plugin is upgraded, the UI will basically reload automatically. So I'm going to click Upgrade Plugin. I'm going to wait for that before I click Next. So I'm just going to click pause on this whilst that basically, okay, so I'm going to click Next. Plugin should be upgraded to proceed. Okay, there we go. I think things are just a little bit slow there, I think. I said I did actually click it before, and I just think that it was a pre-check failed. Okay, let's just pause. Okay, so after some fettling, we eventually managed to get the vCenter Server Lifecycle Manager plugin upgraded. So we're currently running 8.03.00400 of the plugin. And we're now just going to hit the pre-check. And in the past, sometimes we've seen it just come up and say error. And sometimes it's come up basically and done all the pre-checking of our VMware vCenter server 8.03C. So I'm just going to wait for that little Twinkie to finish, and then I'll come back. Nice and green. Source pre-checks run successfully. Please continue with your vCenter upgrade. So I'm going to click next. I must admit, the other than the vCenter Server Lifecycle Manager plugin, and I do wonder whether or not that was because possibly either the Broadcom servers are busy or they hadn't actually basically put the plugin on their servers. I have actually basically seen this before. In the very first version I did a reduced downtime upgrade, I saw the same problem. And just on that note, the very first time that I actually did a reduced downtime upgrade version, and I had the ISO inserted in VMware vCenter server, and we tried to unmount the ISO, which caused a lock and a question to be asked that you needed to answer, which basically says, do you want to override the lock in the virtual machine? And that actually basically made vCenter server unavailable. That is actually a known bug with no workaround, which currently affects Linux. It reappeared again on a cluster with over 400 students' virtual machines that had an ISO connected to the virtual machine that I didn't know about. And I ran a script to remove the CD, the ISO, from those virtual machines. And it basically caused 400 plus virtual machines to become non-responsive. And then vCenter server HA decided to restart them all, causing no end of grief. I'll put that in the description. I did actually basically reach out to the vExperts at the time about it. They hadn't seen it. And then later on, happened to me in real life. and then actually basically Googled it as you do, and there is actually basically a Broadcom KB for that, and there is no there is a workaround to actually edit the VMX file, but at the moment there isn't actually a fix for that. Anyway, so we're going to configure the target appliance. This is something that I generally forget to do. So configure target appliance, and if you haven't done an RDU before, basically what we're actually doing now is deploying a fresh new VMware vCenter server 8.0D. The 8.03D will be powered on, and then the settings will be migrated from 8.03C to 8.03D, and then the VMware vCenter server is turned off. Now, recently somebody did actually turn around and say, therefore, do you not need to bother about snapshotting anymore because you're going to get a fresh new VMware vCenter server? Yes, you do, because changes are actually basically made to the existing VMware vCenter server to say that it's been upgraded or patched in a patching.db, I think. So well worth snapshotting and creating a backup. However, of course, you can go in and fettle with your old VMware vCenter server, and you can actually basically remove that patching.db file as well if you wish. Okay, so I'm going to deploy in a different location as source. So I'm going to deploy it to ESXi 002, only because in this particular lab, we've not got the resources to host all the vCenter servers on the same host. So I accept the certificate. So I'm actually going to select the EE data center, but I'm actually going to select the compute resource as ESXi 002, followed by next. Virtual machine name. So again, as is custom in these videos, I'm just going to call it VMware vCenter Server 8.0.3D. Temporary root password. Followed by next. I'm going to deploy a tiny default. Okay. So let's go with small default. Okay, so I'm going to deploy it to a local data store. Okay, so again, entering an FQDN is optional, but if you do enter an FQDN, then do make sure that you can resolve it. So I'm going to go 192.168.182.139. This is just a temporary IP address. Okay, the diff 255. And saw another question a couple of weeks ago asking, was an IP address required to use RDU? Yes, it is temporary, but yes, you need one. And that's a freshly repaired DC. Don't ask. I'm still investigating, but it would appear that the VMFS data store on a NVMe flash SSD vanished. Just poof. and there happened to be a domain controller on it. I don't know why a domain controller was on. I thought it was actually on vSAN, but it went poof. So that was a restore from backup. And to be honest, you really, okay, so it was a restore from backup, which actually basically caused the USN rollback issue. But Microsoft AD is becoming a lot smarter these days, really, with this. So quite simply, all you need to do basically is just to demote that DC. Don't bother uninstalling the role, but demote that DC, promote that DC, and all is fixed. So, you know, I could have stood up a new DC, but that would have basically meant that there would have been need another IP address, and I'd had to have manually routed anyway. So that was freshly repaired today. I think it's ghosts in the machine. So vCenter 8A, Administrator, EE, ESX2. I'm just looking to see small, large, NFS, finish. So that's my configuration of my new target appliance. What will be 8.03D eventually. So now we've actually created the target appliance. I'm going to click next. And it will have. So our new VMware vCenter Server 8.03D has started to be deployed. You can see here that we've set manual switchover. So we're actually going to invoke the switchover. We're not going to leave it to it automatically. And it's preparing the upgrade. And we can currently see that it's deploying the OVF template, copying the virtual machine configuration. And we've got a VMware vCenter Server 8.03D in our inventory, which has not been fully deployed yet. And when it's been fully deployed, it will be powered on automatically. So there's nothing further for me to do than just to sit back and wait for this to complete. And you may have also noticed now that we've also now got the critical update available for the current version of vCenter Server. Go to updates and view and apply the security update. So it obviously just took a little bit of time. Maybe they've got to do a little bit of fettling at Broadcom/VMware to push out that little message that comes on the top there. So I'll just pick X out of that, and I'll just wait basically for this to deploy. I'm going to pop back in here. You can see the deployment has now been completed, and it's just issued the power on request to power on our new fresh version 8.0.3D VMware vCenter Server, and we can just basically watch that boot up. Yep, there we go. So that's actually basically starting to boot. And if we just go back basically to our upgrade progress and just wait, and eventually that will catch up deploying the new version appliance. So that's actually basically going to take all the information that we fed in to the target appliance when we did the edit target appliance step. So that's going to configure that appliance, and then when that comes up, I don't think it will have an IP address. Yeah, okay. So it does have an IP address. So it is actually on the LAN. So eventually when that starts up, then it's actually going to start copying the data from VMware vCenter Server 8.03C to 8.03D, and then power off the old appliance. So I shall bob off, grab a coffee, although it's probably a bit too late now for a coffee. I won't be sleeping, but I'll come back shortly. Just thought I'd come back here now that things are changing, things are happening. We've been at 71% for a while, and it's just jumped up to 88%. And there does appear to be, or maybe it's because I'm watching the screen this time, there does appear to be more verbose information that's appearing here. It was before it said deploying the OVF, powering on the OVF. Now it's in waiting on the initial database replication to complete. The operation can take some time. So obviously data is being migrated or copied, replicated from 8.03C to 8.03D. And when that's done, that'll be at 100%, and we can then switch over. So when that's ready, I'll come on back. So for the moment, see you in a bit. Okay, so this is what we've been waiting for. And as I've actually said and explained before, all the previous stuff that we've done, that technical stuff, can be staged at any time. None of it is going to affect your production environment at all. It's not going to touch it. Other than the deployment of a new VMware vCenter Server 8.03D using a temporary IP address that we've seen, but all that can be staged. Then you can go off and raise the appropriate change via your change board and get approval for it, and a backout plan and all that jazzy stuff that you need for CAB. And once you've actually basically been given the thumbs up that you can switch over, then you can basically hit the switch over, which will take place in the standalone UI. And we've seen that take about 10 to 15 minutes, which I think if you're using the RDU function, you will see that it can certainly save you a lot of time. I think using the VAMI upgrade legacy method, that you're looking at maybe 45 to 60 minutes worth of downtime or outage compared to RDU, which takes 10 to 15 minutes. So without further ado, and I'm not the only person that says that. I was watching a couple of YouTube videos the other day and I saw people say, and without further ado. So without further ado, I'm now going to hit the switch over button, and hopefully, all being well, in 10 to 15 minutes time, vCenter server vCenter aa.saras-console.co.uk will be upgraded, and the older version 8.03C will be shut down, and we'll be running the freshly new patched 8.0D, which basically fixes the vulnerability, which was VMSA 2024-0019, and now they've added a .2 on the end, because clearly 8.03C did not fix the issues. And we've got a PDF release notes there. I didn't spot that before. So let's just download those release notes. Just have a little look. Okay, so we've got the update. Yeah, okay. So they've not even, as it said before, we saw that it sort of kind of turned around and said that they were doing some updates or something or other on their main site. So there's the release notes PDF, so you can actually basically see what's been fixed. But I think the biggest takeaway is that if you're running any other version than 8.03D now, then you will have some quite critical severities within the product. So let's just kind of go back, and we're still switching over. I'm going to keep an eye on the switch over Twinkie, and we'll come back when it's done. And this is what we've been waiting for. Switch over completed. I would still prefer that was a green tick, and that was, I don't know, in green or in a color. The vCenter server, vCenter 8a.saras-consultant is upgraded. The upgrade was successful, and your vCenter server is now at the new version. navigate to, so I'm going to click Open vSphere Client. Now, we've done this before with mixed results. Okay, that's good. Because sometimes we've done this and we've launched a vSphere client and it's actually basically turned around and told us that the web client is initializing, or we've seen no healthy upstream. So let's have a little look. Loading. We've got a Twinkie spinning disk. We've got no message that says no healthy upstream yet. We've got a logon prompt, and I'm going to log in with administrator vSphere.local and its magic password, and I wait with bated breath. Da, 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 da. Are we now at VMware vCenter server 8.03 Delta? If we are, then yeah, there we go. Okay, it's completely normal, obviously, to see this an error because I'm mounting the ISO there. But the fact that we've got this lovely green banner across the top that actually basically tells us that we've been successfully updated to version 8.03.00400, which is 8.03D. I bet I look surprised that something, as I said, the ghoulies and the ghouls and the spooks are out tonight. Because I've had no end of problems this week, and maybe they will continue for the next 10 days until I get my carved pumpkins outside the house to ward off all those evil spirits that are currently here. Okay, so let's just big X out of that, and I want to get back to the summary. Okay, so the host usage is a bit poorly on ESXi002. Not a surprise, really, to be honest, because as I've said before, these hosts are really sort of kind of running out of steam. But there you go. The proof is in the pudding that we're now 8.03.243.22831, which is 8.03 D. So thanks so much for watching. I'll put all this together. So finally, just one more thing, and thanks very much.